Indian consumer story finds a new protagonist every decade. Foreign brands in the 1990s, then came the supermarkets of the 2000s, the era of large e-commerce marketplace in the previous decade, and now, in the post-pandemic era, it is the direct-to-consumer brands. The stylists and trendsetters of New Age India, D2C has given a facelift to how India shops online by truly personalizing choice for India's 200 million online consumer base, which is the third largest in the world after China and the US. Riding the pandemic wave, these online-first brands have redefined our fashion sense, our beauty and skincare routines, and our snacking habits, to name just a few changes that we've seen around us. In just a short period of time, India has seen the rise of over 800 D2C brands with combined revenue of about $12 billion, which is set to grow fivefold over the next 5 years to touch $60 billion in market size. This as per CII. Now, as we know, expanding the market often requires the foray into brave new categories, and that's exactly the trend. From home solutions to pet care, from smart sleep to community-led brands, and from plant-based foods to sustainable living, and so much more. India's D2C e-commerce story is winning new frontiers as it captures the imagination of the consumer. Hello and welcome to Young Turks, India's longest-running show on startups and entrepreneurship. I'm Shereen Bhan. Well, joining me now to talk about the growth of India's D2C market as we head into the biggest sales season, I have with me Sukhleen, Aneja, the CEO of Good Brands, part of the Good Glam Group. Also with me, Chaitanya Ramalingegowda, co-founder of Wakefit, and Shashank Sinha, the CEO of Drools Pet Food. Gentlemen and Sukhleen, many thanks for joining us on this edition of Young Turks. Appreciate your time. Chaitanya, let me start by talking to you about what we are seeing as far as the D2C explosion is concerned. As I pointed out, 800 brands at this point in time and counting. You started Wakefit in 2016. You moved into a new adjacency in 2020. And that seems to be the experiment with many D2C brands at this point in time. Exploring new adjacencies, exploring new categories, expanding the niches that they currently operate in. In the past, 4 or 5 years of your existence and your journey, what's been the big trends that you've caught on to, and what are you now looking forward to?
Thanks for having me, Shireen. So you're absolutely right. When Ankit and I started this company, Wakefit, in 2015 and 2016 beginning, we started off as a simple mattress company, online mattress company that would provide a really good quality product directly produced in our factories and shipped into the consumer's home without any middlemen. And that promise sort of evolved into a sleep accessories business, which means we expanded from there into accessories, bed sheets, comforters, pillows, and so forth. And then about 3 years back, during the pandemic, we also expanded into the furniture range. So this whole journey has given us 3 or 4 major learnings and major trends that we saw. Number one is that a D2C brand works very, very well when you have a very good hero product, which has a lot of customer love, good NPS, and your ability to service their demand very, very fast. For us, that product was orthopedic memory foam mattress. The second trend that we saw is that it's very easy to start a D2C company, but it is very hard to scale a D2C company without a sustainable backend. So we took this call long ago, and from day one, we operate our own factories. So today we operate about 6 factories, about 16 warehouses, and we have about 200 carpenters. And it's all possible to do this because this gives us tremendous control on cost and innovation. We are able to service so much. We are able to innovate so much. And without this, if we had just been a trader who was slapping our label on top of something that a contract manufacturer is doing, we wouldn't have been able to innovate. The third trend that we have seen is customers request for a lot of content, and they're very, very research savvy, and they don't purchase anything without a lot of their own conviction being built through reviews, checking with their family and friends, and their own research on the content that the brand has put out. So without these, we believe that these 3 trends have very, very played a very important role in our growth, and that's why we are here at this point in time.
Chaitanya, I think that very succinctly puts together some of the key learnings that you've experienced. And I think that speaks about the journey for many D2C brands. And you're absolutely right. One, of course, is identifying that hero product, as you said. The other, while it's easy to start, I think the challenge really is in being able to build scale, controlling your supply chain. I think that's one of the other important issues that you raise. And of course, building a community around the product by way of research and so on and so forth. I think that's the experience that many others are on at this point in time as well. But Shashank, let me cut to you now, because you were well ahead of the curve, so to speak, because you launched Drools in 2009, well before people were actually talking about formalizing a very fragmented market, which continues to be extremely fragmented even today. You've now got the likes of L-Catterton on board as investors. I want to understand from you, Shashank, like we just heard there from Chaitanya, what's been the journey, what have been the key lessons, but more importantly, as we now build out scale and make sure that this D2C story is here to stay in a viable, sustainable, profitable way, what do we need to focus on?
Thanks for having us here, actually. See, what you said correctly, very fine, that building a pet care brand in India is not easy, and building on D2C was much difficult, actually. We have our balances made of both offline and online, which is paying us result today, the way we are moving ahead. Pet care, if you see, is very challenging in terms of, because the consumer and the customers are different. The one who is buying is not going to eat your food, right? The one who is eating the food is not able to give a feedback. So understanding both the consumer who is going to use the product and the customer who is going to pick up the product from the shelf is very interesting. And I'm lucky to be a veterinarian and then coming to this category to understand the animal first and then the humans later, actually. So that helped us to understand what are the requirements a pet requires and how it's going to fit into the pockets of the consumer, actually. There, the price point of Indian strategy, Drools, which is a 100% home, Indian-born and brought-up brand, made an inroad in this category. Consumer first has been our priority since beginning. We have always understand where a consumer will be trying to pick, what are the checkpoints where customers move out of the category. So the biggest challenge for our space is entry barriers are very high and the exit barriers are very low. The acquisition cost is very high. Where our online presence helped us to build up the content, as Chaitanya said, to bridge the knowledge gap, to understand the customer and his requirement as per his pockets was very, very critical for Drools to understand. Going forward, if I feel the way Drools is trying to bridge that knowledge gap in liaising with the veterinarians, the breeders, the influencers, who can bridge this knowledge gap is very, very critical for our pet industry to go ahead. And especially Drools, being an Indian brand, try to do as much as possible with engaging channel partners, pet parents, veterinary colleges, everybody as much as possible to reach out. But the digitalization, the content, the Amazons and Flipkarts have helped us to reach with the right knowledge to the customers. And an LCAT coming in proves our point of a professionally and in a right direction build up a brand, which I feel will be very good for us to go ahead from what we have built in last 10 years.
Yes, I would imagine that is, in fact, a big vote of confidence, getting a marquee investor like L-Catterton on board. But Sukhleen, let's address some of the issues that we've just heard there from both Chaitanya as well as Shashank. And I want you to explain to us, how you're dealing with some of these issues across the Good Glam group. And more importantly, the opportunities that you're now looking at. I think what we're hearing now from across the D2C space is that while it's great to actually start online, the future is going to be a mix of both online and offline. Just about every brand that we've spoken to seems to be heading down in that direction. The cost of acquisition, perhaps it is different for different players at this point in time, but what we are given to understand is that because there is now a greater acceptability, adoption rates are higher, perhaps the cost of acquisition has become lower, at least for brands with hero products. I want to understand from you what you're seeing as trends at this point in time, and what, more importantly, are you forecasting for the future, the near future?
I think I'm echoing the sentiments of what we've heard from the other co-panelists, but I think 3 or 4 large trends that I'd probably underscore. Number one, I think more and more consumers are open to trying new brands. And I think that's where there's a lot of excitement, which digital companies can leverage, because consumers are very open to trying new brands, nascent brands, and today there are enough and more manufacturers who can cater to niches. Unlike the world we grew up in, where mass marketing required you to go to the lowest common denominator, versus that today you can really capitalize a powerful niche if you have a good offering. I think the second big trend that one sees is that invariably consumers want to experience brands. Even if they hear about your brands, they do want to touch and feel your products. So hence, omnichannel is the way to go across industry, because I think all of us on the table are passionate about building brands. And I don't believe brands can ever be built unless there isn't an experiential leg to your products. The third important sensitivity, I would say, that is a concern for D2C players who are playing in highly competitive segments. So if you look at beauty and personal care, it's a $30 billion segment. Almost nearly half of it is between personal care and makeup. Extremely competitive. In the last decade, we've seen many new brands being born. I think the big challenge is commoditization. How do you really create distinctiveness for your brand versus others, especially online, where many brands now seem like Me Too's? So I think that becomes one challenge. And last not the least, I think supply chain efficiency becomes extremely critical, because one of the things that D2C allows you to do is access to first-party data. So your ability to upsell, cross-sell, have the data to actually be able to understand your consumer's full funnel, I think is a huge help for marketers, especially as they think through their entire full funnel advertising from awareness to purchase. I think that's the power of the data that makes you a lot more efficient. But I think at the same time, what none of us can shy away from is I think we do need to create distinctive brands that continue to give consumers products which are worth repeating. So the holy grail continues to be repeats. And I think that is one thing which all of us are fighting for.
Oh, absolutely. You're right in saying that customers are willing to experiment, but that also means that it's harder to instill brand loyalty and get customers to stick. So what does it take to create stickiness? That is what we will discuss when we return after this very short break. Stay on with us. You're watching a special edition of Young Turks. We're back in a minute.